What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Oak, back on track. This time, we're in the Super Formula, and as you can see, as always, things are chaotic from the jump, right? In this video, we're going to talk about a couple things. There will be two races in both of them, and I'll go ahead and spoil really all the fun stuff now. We're going to go and get two podiums. But in both of these videos, we're just going to talk about a couple things that I've sort of noticed in my really about 6 or 7 weeks now in iRacing. We'll call it 2 months. We'll call it 2 months. Well, we're going to talk about a couple things. First off, let's do a bit of orientation. As you can see, we're in the big goal. That's really going to be the most important bullet point I've got on today's list of things, is that we're in the big gulp, so the flybys will be ridiculous for the entirety of this video. We do not change liveries between the two races, although there is about a day in between and a P4 to P2 in between that I just didn't press record for, and I didn't remember to press record for sort of after. But either way, let's get into our first bullet point, and that's really going to be the mindset that we've been taking going into a lot of races. As you can see here, we're going to get passed by somebody who, honestly, I think he found about a second on us between Maggots and Beckett's. So coming down the straight there, I mean, we were really just rice and peas at that point. So let's talk about more of that mindset, though. Really and truly, I've been stuck on the concept of seat time, right? I know that one, crashing is not good and it won't help you get I rating or safety rating. But truthfully, just staying in the race and being more honest, staying in the race and being able to have the replay of the guys, of the top guys in your race is a very valuable thing. And so that's really the mindset that I've taken into every single race. I've done a bit of battling here and there, and so I do battle where I can. But at this particular point in the race, with this being the open setup, 35-minute race, I just don't want to crash. You know, this is early on in the race. I'm on heavy fuel. Tires aren't where I would like them to be, particularly. Not that I would even know what that should even feel like at this point, right? But that's really the mentality. It's just keeping things on the track. I could certainly try to set the world ablaze, right? But in doing so, I could successfully do that and set my tires ablaze as well, and end up in the wall. And that's certainly not what we want, especially for a safety rating or I rating standpoint, which both of those things are just very fickle to come by. And in a setting like this, in any competitive settings, there's always going to be levels, right? And people are going to have certain turns figured out, before others, and sort of vice versa for maybe a completely different sector, right? That is racing. But I would say in a game like iRacing, a lot of it comes down to just keeping your nose clean and just keeping it on the track. And these are two examples. Both of these races are examples of that. In one of the higher classes of car, right? This is the Super Formula. This is where a lot of people are looking to go to. But if you want to get here quickly, that really should be your mentality. One, that should be your mentality because it's super efficient as far as iRating goes. Two, it should be your mentality because I think that's really going to be your cheapest option, right? I'm not really sure exactly how the schedules match up between the Super Formula and the F4, but I don't think they are the same set of tracks, right? Like I think on some of those F4 tracks, Those are some of your smaller, lesser known tracks. And then once you get into the Super Formula Series, and this is something that everyone should know, that is pretty much the same calendar. From what I've seen, Super Formula Lights and Super Formula have the exact same calendar. Progressing up to at least the Super Formula pretty quickly, Super Formula Lights quickly, excuse me, is going to be advantageous for the wallet as well. I can certainly say that. But as you can see here, we're setting decent lap times, right? We're in the 39s. We just set a 39.8. The guy, Navas, who's passing us right now, we're probably butchering his name, right? But he was running about a second faster than us, and we didn't want to fight him tooth and nail. I actually did want to defend coming into that turn, but where I have my pit limiter and where I have my my deployment here, they are right beside each other, and so I actually smacked the pit limiter on exit, and I didn't really defend too much. I made him go the long way around. That was really about the extent of my defense there, and that's sort of the mentality, right? It's I'm gonna do the best that I possibly can. I made a mistake. I'm not gonna make my mistake your mistake as well. If he were to click the wrong gear through there, maybe he clicks down to third on accident. I don't know. Once again, the big goal. But if he were to make a mistake, that would have been a position gained, and that's happened in this race, and that's going to continue to happen as we continue to set faster lap times here, and that's really going to be the thing, right? That's going to be the next thing that I want to talk about, is the difference between this game, iRacing, and other titles, say in Assetto Corsa, or even a title like a Race Room. The biggest thing that you're gonna find when you're racing, I would say any particular class of car, but I can speak, specifically for the higher downforce class of cars. When I say it's much more centered around what the limit of the tire is. I think in games like Race Room and even Assetto Corsa, I think those two games are similar in this way. Both of those games, it does come down to more so about how far can I push this car without really losing the time. It almost becomes down to sort of like in the case of a high downforce car. How can I find the absolute limit of the downforce, because the tire, I know the tire will be fine, right? And that's the thing. If you notice, say even I think in WSS for Assetto Corsa, and other titles like Race Room with their F4 series, both of those series in their individual sessions, they have some sort of accelerated or increased tire wear. And that's just because they just don't have the same sort of tire model and sort of physics engine, I guess you could say, that's sort of, built around the capabilities of the tire. And that's really the thing. So what do I mean when I say the capabilities of the tire, right? What exactly are we talking about here? I think a great example, and two things that really factor into sort of the capabilities of the tire as you're driving, and this is anywhere, but a great example of this is, say you're taking a car like the F4 car, which has a little bit less downforce, doing a little bit more managing of the rear, and you take it to a place like VIR, right? What you'll find from session to session, depending on seriously just cloud cover and the air temperature, a VIR with the F4 car, say on a track that is 18C, feels very different from a track that is, say 32C, right? And I know we're speaking in Celsius here, but even smaller sort of swings, say a track that is 18C versus a track that's 21 or 22C, which I would argue is probably the sweet spot, right? I think when you go to test, I think it's 25 or something like that. Um, but you know, in those different sort of conditions, the limit of grip changes ever so slightly, but certainly it does change, right? And that's something that I think is unique to race room, and I think that's why you see a lot of professionals love it because of how they have the tire model. To go even further into that, I think the biggest concept that you'll see from this is that track and tire sort of evolution, right? That relationship, that plays a big part into not only how you drive the car, but the lap times that you put in, and how you may want to attack a particular sector, attack a particular driver at the time, all those sorts of things, right? And as you can see from us, we are going to set progressively faster times. I think we get down to the 38 threes by the end of this race. And I'll make note of this now so that I don't forget later. But in the second race, you'll see we do shave off about a second worth of time for pace. And that was in the fixed setup. Shorter session. So you could argue fresher tires, right? Just having a conversation about tires between those two sessions. But in watching higher lobbies, what you'll see is with that sort of evolution of the track and tire, the way that you drive the car becomes very different, right? And the times that are even possible become very different, because when you drive cars, when you drive any car, you guys all know that finding a 10th here or there is a very hard thing to do once you get to the top end. But for 99% of the population, if you could just do this one thing slightly better, that may grant you a quarter of a second. That may grant you a whole 3/10, right? And I think this game does a great job of, in any particular situation, either rewarding you or taking away, that quarter of a second, that 3 to 4/10, based off of very small errors, right? Now, what I also should say is, in a bigger car like this, what you'll find, and this is really what makes battling a lot tougher, is, in a bigger car like this, when you make an error, as we, make a small error on power there, when you do make an error, what you'll find is that you're not going to, say, lose the car, or even lose, say, half a second, as you may say in a car like the F4, right? But you will go slightly offline, and you will, lose that 10th or two, from one turn to the next, or a 10th in one turn, and then resultingly 2/10, in the next, and you could try to make up for it by getting on power slightly earlier, and if you're really good, you will do so, and maybe you shave back a 10th, or even 500ths, but then you are actively working the tire, and you are sort of hampering the top end of that tire, and the ultimate ceiling of your lap time and what you'll be able to achieve on that set, at least. Even more so, I think, if you go watch not even the high downforce guys, but if you go watch, say, something like some of the GP2 guys, some of the GT2 or GT3 guys at the higher levels, a lot of their braking really comes down to, like, braking very lightly, and then right at the end, at the perfect moment, having a ton of rotation. Just having a ton of rotation. You know what I mean? But it's because you've brought the car in and you've put the car on this sort of perfect platform for the tires to have the most amount of grip, and now you can just throw the car through the corner. So now you're getting, great speed through the corner, and you're gonna get a great exit, and you're probably gonna get on the power earlier. So you're just gonna be really fast, and that's sort of how this game works. But doing that at the highest level, because it is, good in other ways, I guess, because they really have figured out the whole physics thing here, right? You know, it's one thing to understand that concept. It's a completely different thing to be able to execute that concept, right? And so, as you can see here for this race, we've kind of yapped a lot, and we haven't really told you how many positions we've gained, but we are in second place at this point. The previous guy, Navas, who passed us earlier, he's actually going to go on to win the race. As for us in this video, we're going to go to the second video and do a little bit more of, I don't know, I guess actual commentary here, right? But I did want to just talk about, that first sort of month on the game. But anyway, as we get into race number 2, we're starting from, I think we started from P5 in this race. And once again, we are going to end up on the podium again. First, let's talk a little bit about the fixed setup. It's bad. It's pretty bad. I would say about my open setup, just to give away all of my secrets, it's one click in the front and the rear for downforce, and I would argue it's better. Now, in this race in particular, this is about 2 days later, as I've said, and I did have an opportunity to watch an A-rated driver who seemed to be just doing things right, so I definitely took notes. But we're driving better in this race. I'm pretty sure we're about to get off track here. I think we had that planned in the race, in our strategy meeting, the day before, so we're good. So that's all good. It's all just a result of this really bad fixed setup. So we take the 1X there, but in this race, we're definitely doing a much better job of one, actually using our deployment, and two, just pushing the tire just a little bit more earlier on, sort of in the race. So we are going to have to defend from really 2 McLaren guys here. We've really got the whole team behind us. We're going to have to defend behind both of them. They're actually going to have a team meeting about that one later, because that's not going to work out for either one of them. As for us, we're still now in P5, and at this particular point in the race, still getting understeer. We're just going to cool it. We're going to try to put in some pretty decent laps, hit our marks, push as well as possible, not to get absolutely caught by the guys behind us. But we should have a bit of a gap, given, that we had a little bit of a roadblock, right? And once again, that's just going to be falling back on what we previously mentioned, right? We are in it to finish, really, at this point, right? I don't exactly want to push too hard. As you see, we did get a bit of the rear complaining there as we got on the power. Just a bit of that difference in surface as we were on a little bit of the curbing, but we don't want to push too much. But I would just say I wasn't pushing particularly hard here. I would say at this point, like I said, this is about 2 days later, so I went to testing in 46.4 somewhere at some point. That was the fastest we've ever gone. I know somebody's going to be in the comments like, oh, I've gone faster. I'm certain of it. But yeah, so we're not pushing too hard here, but we are a lot more comfortable. And that's going to be the biggest thing to finding lap time, especially at a place like Silverstone where you really do have to trust your car. And once you have the tires in a good window and once you're in a good rhythm, I mean, the times really do just start to pour in, right? But as for us, we are now in the 39s. The guys ahead of us are right in the 38 high, so just doing a couple tenths slower than those guys. Still pretty good pace. The guy behind us was actually going much faster than us. I think he had done about a 39 8 at the time or so, maybe a 39 0. I can't exactly see what that is, but yeah, I'm not gonna stop the recording. Either way, we're still pushing pretty good here. We're gonna have very good pace really throughout this entire race. The guys ahead of us, like I mentioned, they were pushing slightly faster than me and slightly faster than the guy in P2. And so what you'll see is as we fast forward later on in the race, those two guys are going to, be pretty consistent, and they're going to work together to fight and to really catch P2, which that's the thing that you will find in higher lobbies. I will say, once the race sort of filters out, a lot of people really do tend to try to work together and not sort of, crash off rip. But as we mentioned, those two guys who were ahead of us, they have now passed the guy who's in P2. That's going to be Noel. And we are doing about the same here. We've just done a lap that is slightly faster than him. We had been matching his pace for the first few laps being behind him. But now at this point, we are looking to push within a second, right? We know that once we can get within a second, as in, many racing games, once you're within a second, you're really in business, especially if you've got a little bit of pace on the driver ahead. And I felt like we did have just a bit of an edge. I think our fastest time was only about 3 or 4 tenths faster than his, but at a place like Silverstone, you could really feel that 3 to 4 tenths, right? So we're going to throw in some more overtake here and try to work ourselves into range. We're going to first try to get in his mirrors. Every time we go into a battle, I don't really look to overtake you at the first possible opportunity, unless it's just absolutely there, right? Like if it's there, then sure. If you're just gonna let me have it, then sure. But otherwise, I do try to be pretty poised in a lot of my battles. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna bluff you. You know what I mean? I'm gonna get in your mirrors, make it look like I'm going for one, not. Then back out. Try to get a good exit, make another run, come back, get in your mirrors, bluff, back out. You know what I mean? Like I'm super patient, which is really annoying, right? Because if I have the pace on you, then you kind of have to defend it. You kind of have to do that over and over and over. And I've had it where in lower lobbies, guys who are, they're honestly good racers. They just didn't have the pace at the time. It's like, all right, like I'll sit here and we'll just keep battling over and over and over, especially if they're clean. And some guys, like at a certain point, they'll let you have the position. Just straight up, because they're just like, it'd be easier if we could both just part ways here. At that point, what I'm finding though, in the bigger car is, instead of, I do think, especially with this setup, I do think the car is a bit rubbish when it comes to fighting in traffic. But if you are decent at doing that, and I've found that in the lobbies that I'm in, I'm doing that pretty okay. As you see, we both have a bit of a moment on power there. Even if you are good at battling, for lap after lap after lap, truth is you really don't want to do that. you know, you really do want to, sure, be patient, but at a certain point, man, you just got to get it done, right? And that's the lesson that I'm learning the most. Is, you know, when do you go for the move? When is it appropriate? You know, for here, as you can see, we're gonna back out of this move just because we didn't want to crash there. I had a race actually right before this where we went out actually right on this turn, and it really made me upset just because it was net code. The guy, I think the guy I was battling could have done things a little bit differently, and we would have never been that close. But ultimately, it was net code, and that's I think a bit more frustrating. But as you can see here, we're just gonna have a little bit of a look. This is what I do, man. This is what I do. I'm gonna have a look. You know, get in your mirrors. You know, if you make a mistake, then it's really gonna be a problem. But if you defend, you know, I'm perfectly content with falling back a little bit, getting a good exit, you know, for the next big section, and fighting you back, you know, come, you know, 3 turns later. So as we said, now a couple turns later, here we are, and we're gonna go for the move in the big gulp. That's going to be now at this point in the race P3 secured for us. The 2 guys ahead are still battling. As for us, we are putting in really good pace, right? We're down now into the 37.8s. So as I said, we did find a lot of time, you know, over the course of really a few days worth of sessions. But I've now been talking for about 25 minutes. For the rest of this time, I think I have about 60 seconds worth of deployment, and I have him in my slipstream, right? So we're going to have to defend. We're going to do our best, and I will leave you guys to it. If you guys enjoyed the end of this video, or just the little conversation we had here and my thoughts on iRacing so far, let me know down in the comments what you think. And yeah, we'll talk later. I'll keep putting in laps, and if you guys like the no commentary, let me know if you guys want the no commentary for this. Matter of fact, after this, I'll probably just drop this without me talking. So yeah, have at it.